All right, movie fans, buckle up, because we are diving deep into this year's Golden Globes. And I don't just mean the fashion. We're going way past the red carpet to figure out what these awards actually mean.
Yeah.
You know, from the Oscars, of course, but also maybe for like the whole future of film. So consider this your cheat sheet to sounding like a total movie know-it-all.
I love that. A deep dive.
Exactly. And, you know, this year is extra interesting. I mean, we've got Emilia Perez winning Best Picture. It's a musical in Spanish about a trans gangster.
You've got to admit that's not your typical Hollywood story.
Not at all. And then there's The Brutalist, which is what, a 3.5-hour drama?
Yeah.
With an intermission. I mean, in the age of like TikTok and Instant everything, who's making these movies, and more importantly, who's watching them.
Well, and then to have them win big awards.
Exactly. It's like, are we seeing a shift?
It really makes you wonder. I mean, both of these films are so different, you know, in terms of style, but they've both gotten praise for being bold and for really focusing on, you know, the human experience. I think maybe voters are looking for something a bit more than just pure entertainment, you know?
Okay, so deeper stuff.
Exactly.
Films that like make you think and feel things and all that.
Right.
So do you think Hollywood is like moving away from those, you know, safe formulaic movies?
It's possible. And it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I mean, don't forget that last year, the Globes were pretty good at predicting the Oscars.
Oh, that's right.
So if that happens again this year, it could mean big changes for the whole industry.
All right, you've got me hooked.
Good.
Now I have to ask about Anora. 5 nominations.
Yeah.
It even won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is like a massive deal.
Huge.
And then totally shut out at the Globes. What happened there?
I know, it's surprising. Especially for a film that's gotten so much, you know, international praise. It really makes you think about the difference between, you know, festival juries and the Hollywood foreign press.
Yeah, because festival juries love those like artsy films.
Right, auteur-driven narrative.
Exactly, and the HFPA seems to go for things that are maybe more mainstream.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
So maybe this says less about Anora being a good or bad film and more about how award shows are changing.
Maybe. I mean, the Globes have always been a bit unpredictable.
It's true.
But this year's results, they definitely feel like they're part of a bigger conversation about what makes a film award-worthy.
Oh, okay, I love that.
I mean, what even is award-worthy?
That is the question. All right, let's lighten things up a bit and talk about the speeches. Demi Moore winning Best Actress for The Substance was definitely a highlight for me. Her speech was so real, you know, talking about perseverance and her whole journey in Hollywood.
Yeah, definitely. I was so moved.
Do you think moments like that actually like influence how people vote?
Absolutely. We forget sometimes that, you know, voters are humans.
Right, not robots.
Exactly. They have feelings. It's easy to forget.
And a genuine speech, like Demi's coming from, you know, someone so respected.
Right, a legend.
It can really stick with you.
Make a connection.
Exactly.
Okay, well then there's Sebastian Stan. He won Best Actor for A Different Man. And his speech was amazing.
Oh, so good.
But I heard it might actually hurt his chances at the Oscars. How is that even possible?
Yeah, that's award strategy for you.
Yeah.
It gets complicated. See, Stan is also getting buzz for his role in The Apprentice, which is more of a dramatic role.
Oh, right.
And the thing is, the Globes separate comedy and drama, but the Oscars lump them together. So by giving such a memorable speech for a comedic role, he might split the vote, you know?
Between his 2 performances.
Exactly, and that could hurt his chances in both categories.
Wow. So giving a great speech can actually backfire?
Sometimes.
This is a wild game. Speaking of speeches, Kieran Culkin's was adorable. So awkward in the best way. He won Best Supporting Actor for A Real Pain. Oh, he's so funny.
I don't know, remind me of those classic Robert Downey Jr. speeches.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that mix of like self-deprecating humor, but also genuine gratitude.
Totally.
Is that like the new thing for acceptance speeches?
Maybe it's a nice change, you know?
From the super rehearsed ones.
Right. It feels more authentic.
Like they're just being themselves.
And that makes them more relatable.
More human.
Exactly.
All right, we've talked about the big winners, some standout speeches. Now let's get to the snubs and surprises that had everyone talking. We already touched on Anora, but Wicked also stood out to me. Huge box office hit, right?
Huge.
But only 1 win, and it felt kind of like a consolation prize.
Right.
What's up with that?
It's funny, isn't it? You'd think a film that's so popular with audiences would do better with awards.
I know, right?
But sometimes I think being too mainstream can actually work against you.
Interesting.
Like maybe there's this idea that if something's for the masses, it can't be high art.
Oh, so there's still that tension between art and commerce,
Or
even with awards.
especially with awards.
Okay, so then there's Fernanda Torres. She won Best Actress in a Drama for I'm Still Here. And she's a huge favorite among what we call film Twitter, those passionate film fans on social media.
Right.
Do you think this is a sign that online communities are gaining real influence?
It's possible. I mean, film Twitter is a force.
Oh,
They can really shape the conversation around a film
generate buzz.
and champion films and performances that might otherwise get overlooked.
So Fernanda's win could be like proof of their power.
It could be.
It's like we're seeing film criticism becoming more democratic,
Right.
with regular fans having a real impact.
Exactly. And that raises all sorts of interesting questions about the future of film criticism.
Right, like, will traditional critics still matter?
Will online communities become the new tastemakers?
Fascinating. Now, another surprise was Flow winning Best Animated Feature. It beat out some major studio releases. Pretty impressive for a film from Latvia.
Oh, for sure. And get this, Flow is also nominated for Best International Feature at the Oscars.
Wow, so it's going up against live-action films.
Yeah, it's super rare for an animated film to do that.
That's amazing.
It shows how powerful the film is,
To connect with people across cultures.
Exactly.
Maybe this means we're seeing a growing appreciation for international cinema.
I think so.
Feels like more and more films from outside Hollywood are getting recognized,
Definitely.
which is awesome.
Yeah, we're seeing this globalization of storytelling.
Right. Filmmakers from all over the world sharing their unique perspectives.
And audiences are responding.
They want those different stories.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about a few more specific moments before we move on. Brady Corbett's speech when he won Best Director for The Brutalist was, well, let's just say unconventional.
Yeah, you could say that.
Reading from his iPhone?
I don't know, it didn't really project confidence.
Maybe he was nervous?
It almost felt like he wasn't fully present.
Ouch, so not the best way to start a speech. Did he redeem himself at all?
Thankfully, yes. When he accepted the award for Best Drama Picture, his speech was much more heartfelt.
Okay.
He spoke about the film's themes and the challenges of making it.
So the passion was there.
It reminded me that even the most awkward moments can be redeemed with, genuine emotion.
That's a good lesson.
Yeah.
What about Jacques Audiard? He directed Emilia Perez.
Oh, right.
Any memorable moments from his speeches?
His speeches were a bit rambling, to be honest.
Really?
Maybe because of the language barrier.
His English isn't great.
Right. But luckily, his star, Carla Sofia Gascon, stepped in.
Nice save.
And she gave a really compelling message about the film.
Highlighting the themes of identity and acceptance.
Exactly.
It's always great when a co-star can jump in like that. Okay,
Yeah.
Are there any other speeches or moments we should mention before we move on?
Well, there was one thing that stuck with me from Brady Corbett's speech for Best Picture.
Oh, yeah.
He used his time to advocate for directors having final cut,
Control over their films?
Right.
Oh, that's a hot topic.
He said it shouldn't even be controversial, but, in today's industry, it often is.
That's a pretty bold statement to make on such a big stage. What do you think it says about the state of filmmaking?
It definitely highlights the struggle for creative autonomy.
Right.
In an industry that's so driven by, money.
Bottom line.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see if his comments spark more debate.
I'm sure they will. This is why I love awards season.
Me too.
It's not just about the awards themselves. It's about the conversations they start.
Exactly.
The issues they raise.
Yeah.
Then the glimpses they give us into how Hollywood really works.
Behind the curtain.
But before we get too lost in those conversations, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's been buzzing online. The power of film Twitter.
Ah, yes. The voice of the people.
We've already touched on Fernanda Torres' win and how it might show their influence. But I want to dig deeper.
Okay.
Do you think film Twitter is like challenging the old guard of film criticism?
I think they're definitely shaking things up. With Twitter, everyone has a voice. Right. It's so accessible.
Exactly. And that means we're hearing from a wider range of perspectives.
Not just the professional critics.
Right. You've got passionate fans, aspiring critics, even filmmakers themselves.
All joining the conversation.
Sharing their opinion.
Championing films that might otherwise fly under the radar.
It's like a giant virtual film club.
But with the power to impact real-world outcomes.
Exactly. And this is leading to some really interesting dynamics.
Yeah, like what?
Well, traditional critics, they used to dominate the conversation.
They had all the power.
Now they're finding themselves having to engage with this much broader audience.
So are we seeing a power shift? Are the old school critics feeling the heat?
It's hard to say for sure, but film Twitter is a force to be reckoned with.
No doubt.
Their passion, their ability to generate buzz, their support for diverse voices, it's all contributing to a more dynamic and inclusive film culture.
And that's a good thing.
I think so. Okay, so we've talked about the winners, the speeches, the snubs, the surprises, and even the impact of film Twitter. Let's zoom out and look at the big picture. Based on what we saw at the Golden Globes, what are the key takeaways about the state of filmmaking today?
I think one of the most prominent themes is the embrace of the unconventional.
Okay, so those unexpected wins weren't flukes.
I don't think so. The wins for Emilia Perez and The Brutalist, those are films that defy the typical Hollywood formulas. And their success suggests a growing appetite for bolder, more thought-provoking stories.
That's exciting. And it's not just the stories themselves that are unconventional. We're also seeing experimentation with formats and styles. I mean, a 3.5-hour drama with an intermission.
I know, that's a bold move.
But it worked. The Brutalist is a hit.
It is.
It shows that audiences are willing to go on a journey.
To be challenged.
They want more than just escapism.
They want films that move them, that stay with them.
This is so refreshing. It feels like we're moving away from those cookie-cutter blockbusters and embracing more diverse and challenging narratives.
Exactly.
And this trend isn't just about the types of stories being told. It's about the voices behind those stories.
Yes.
You know, the recognition of a film like Flow, a Latvian animated feature, it highlights this global perspective.
It shows that great stories can come from anywhere.
Feels like we're entering a golden age of international cinema,
I agree.
where stories from all over the world are finding a wider audience.
And that's enriching the cinematic landscape in so many ways.
All right, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's bring it back to our listener. What should they be paying attention to as award season unfolds? What are the key questions they should be asking themselves?
I think the biggest question is whether this embrace of the unconventional will continue.
Will the Oscars follow the Globe's lead?
Exactly. Will they recognize these bolder choices?
Or will they stick with the safer, more traditional picks?
It's the question on everyone's mind.
The suspense is killing me.
I know, but that's what makes this so exciting.
You're right. The anticipation, the speculation, the debates.
That's all part of the fun.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. But there's still so much more to discuss. So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve deeper into the strategic campaigns, the power dynamics of Hollywood, and of course, we'll make some bold predictions for the rest of awards season. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. I feel like we left things hanging.
Right. Will the Oscars be as bold as the Globes?
Well, and it's not just Emilia Perez and The Brutalist, you know.
True.
There are other things to think about. Like, what about Sebastian Stan?
Oh, yeah. The split vote situation.
Exactly. He's nominated for 2 roles.
One comedy, one drama.
And that could really hurt his chances.
It seems so unfair. He's so good. And that speech.
I know.
And now it might work against him.
Well, that's award season for you. It's not just about talent.
It's about strategy.
Exactly. There are whole teams, working behind the scenes.
Oh, right. To promote the films and get people talking.
Exactly. It's a whole other game.
So it's not enough to just make a great film.
It's not.
You have to play the game, too.
To some extent, yes. Award season is about perception and momentum, as much as it's about, artistic merit.
Okay, so how do you explain that?
Well, think of each awards show as a chapter in a book.
Oh, I like that.
The Golden Globes set the stage.
Okay.
But the Critics' Choice Awards are next week.
That's right.
And those could completely change the narrative.
So it's like a domino effect.
Exactly. One win leads to another.
Builds momentum.
And influences voters along the way.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
And don't forget the power of a good story.
Oh, right. Everyone loves a good story.
Award season loves a comeback story, a first-time nominee.
An underdog.
Exactly. These narratives make the races more exciting.
More engaging.
Exactly.
So it's not just about the films themselves. It's about the people and the stories they represent.
Exactly.
I feel like I'm finally understanding this whole award season thing.
That's what we're here for, to demystify it.
All right, but before we get too deep into the strategy and politics, let's go back to those unconventional Golden Globe winners for a second. Emilia Perez, the Spanish-language musical about a trans gangster, and The Brutalist, the epic 3.5-hour drama. Do you think those wins are just like anomalies? Or are they a sign of something bigger happening in Hollywood?
That is the question, isn't it? Their wins could mean that Hollywood is finally opening up to different kinds of stories.
Yeah, stories that challenge conventions.
Right, and represent a wider range of voices.
That would be amazing.
It would.
To see more diversity and representation.
Absolutely.
But it's also possible that these wins are just outliers.
It's true.
Maybe Hollywood will just go back to its comfort zone. The same old formulas.
That's always a possibility.
I hope not. I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens at the Oscars.
We will.
Speaking of the Oscars, do you have any early predictions?
It's still early, but I think Emilia Perez has a good chance.
Right.
It's such a unique film, and it has that international appeal.
I'm rooting for them. What about The Brutalist? Do you think its runtime and structure will hurt it?
It's definitely a riskier bet. The Academy tends to like more traditional narratives.
Right.
So a film like The Brutalist might have a tougher time.
But it did win Best Director at the Globes.
That's true. It's definitely a contender.
So a long shot, but not impossible. I love an underdog. What about the acting categories?
Those are always tough.
I know. So much talent.
Sebastian Stan is incredible, but that split vote thing,
Right. It could really hurt him.
we'll see if you can overcome it.
What about Demi Moore?
She is definitely in the running.
Her performance was so good.
And that speech.
So moving.
But Best Actress is always a competitive category.
So many amazing actresses.
So it'll be a tight race.
Okay, I am so excited to see how this all plays out. But before we get carried away with predictions, let's take a minute to appreciate the artistry. These are incredible works of art.
They are.
They transport us, they challenge us, they make us feel things.
Exactly. It's easy to get caught up in the awards game.
The competition.
But at the end of the day, it's about celebrating cinema.
Right. And these awards, they might be symbolic.
They are.
But they do highlight the importance of film.
As a cultural force.
It's not just entertainment.
It's a way to explore the human experience to connect with each other.
But understand the world around us.
Beautifully put. And that brings us to another important part of awards season, the campaigns.
Oh, right. You mentioned how strategic they are. What exactly goes into them?
It's a whole production, publicity appearances, networking. You have to think hundreds of films come out every year.
Right.
But only a handful get nominated.
So how do you stand out?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Filmmakers have to find ways to make their films stand out.
To generate buzz.
To get the attention of voters.
So it's not enough to just make a great film. You have to market it strategically.
You do.
Yeah.
It's about creating a narrative, highlighting its strengths.
Finding the right audience.
Exactly. Think about all those interviews the magazine covers the red carpets.
It's all part of the campaign.
It is.
Wow, I had no idea how much work goes on behind the scenes.
It's a whole other industry.
And it can be really effective.
A good campaign can elevate a film's profile.
Get it, critical acclaim.
And ultimately influence voters.
Okay, I'm seeing the bigger picture now. Award season is this mix of art, commerce, strategy, and perception. It's not just about winning. It's about how these films are presented, discussed, valued.
Exactly, and understanding that can help you appreciate the whole process more.
You know the challenges filmmakers face.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm getting a crash course in Hollywood.
I like to think so.
All right, before we move on to our final thoughts, let's go back to Emilia Perez and The Brutalist one more time. What do you think their wins tell us about the state of filmmaking today?
That's a big question. I think on a symbolic level, their wins show a hunger for something different.
Something more challenging.
Something that reflects the complexities of our world.
Like audiences are tired of the same old thing.
Maybe they want stories that resonate on a deeper level.
That challenge them emotionally, intellectually.
Exactly. And maybe Hollywood is starting to listen.
Starting to realize that there's an audience for films that break the mold.
That push boundaries.
That challenge our assumptions.
There's a possibility.
I hope so. It would be a sign of progress.
It would.
But we have to remember that the film industry is complicated, right?
There are so many forces at play.
Artistic forces, commercial forces.
Exactly. There will always be that tension between innovation and tradition.
Between risk and reward. So the future of film is still uncertain.
Absolutely. And award season is like a microcosm of that.
We see that evolution playing out.
In real time.
Okay, I'm ready for predictions. Will Emilia Perez and The Brutalist keep winning? Will Sebastian Stan overcome the split vote? Who will win those Oscars? But wait, before we get to all that, we have a quick word from our sponsor.
All right, we are back and ready for those predictions.
Yeah.
But first, let's do a quick recap. What have we learned so far?
We've seen some unconventional films winning.
Right, like Amelia Perez and the
But-
Brutals. Yeah, which might mean that voters are, looking for something different.
Something more daring.
Exactly.
And we talked about the power of personal stories, like Demi Moore's speech.
Oh, yeah.
So powerful.
Those human moments can really make a difference.
Totally. And we can't forget about film Twitter.
Right, they're a force.
They're changing the conversation around film.
And even influencing awards.
Crazy.
Uh.
Okay, so much to think about, but now for the main event. Predictions. Do you think Amelia Perez will keep winning?
I think it has a real shot.
You do.
Yeah, it's just so unique.
I know.
It blends genres, it tackles important issues, it has that international appeal.
So it could really resonate with voters.
I think so.
Okay, fingers crossed. What about The Brutalist? Will that runtime hurt its chances at the Oscars?
That's hard to say. The Academy can be pretty traditional.
Right. They like their safe bets.
But The Brutalist has gotten great reviews.
And it won Best Director.
Yeah, so it's definitely a contender.
So it's a long shot,
Yippee.
but not impossible.
Not at all.
Okay, I love a good underdog story.
Yeah.
Now, what about the actors? Any predictions there?
Oh, the acting categories are always so tough.
I know, it's like everyone's amazing.
Sebastian Stan is so talented.
Yes.
But that split vote thing,
Right.
it'll depend on which performance resonates more with voters.
True. What about Demi Moore?
She's definitely a possibility.
I mean, that performance?
And her speech.
So moving.
But Best Actress is always a tough category.
So many incredible women.
It'll be a close one.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. But before we get too caught up in the predictions, let's step back for a second and think about what these awards really mean. You know what they tell us about the role of film in our society.
That's a good point. I think film, at its best, it shows us who we are.
Right.
It reflects our hopes, our fears, our dreams.
It helps us see the world through different eyes,
To connect with each other.
to understand ourselves a little better.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. It's a good reminder that film isn't just entertainment.
It's art.
Powerful.
And these awards, even though they might seem superficial sometimes.
Yeah, there's all the glitz and glamour
Right, but they do highlight how important film is.
to our culture.
They spark conversations, they make us think.
They help us grow.
Exactly.
This has been such a great conversation. Thank you for taking us on this deep dive into the Golden Globes. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
As you watch the rest of awards season, keep an open mind.
Right.
Don't just focus on who wins. Think about the stories, the voices, the values.
Awards season can be a lot of fun,
It can.
but it's also a chance to learn and grow.
I think so.
Well said. That's a wrap on our Golden Globes deep dive. We've talked about the trends, the surprises, the speeches, the predictions, and what it all means. Thank you for joining us. As award season continues, remember to keep watching, keep thinking, and keep talking about film.
For more entertainment news, subscribe to The Hollywood Reposter.